Thursday, June 6th, 2024, and we are at the City of Reno Council Chamber. We'll begin with Agenda Item 1, the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Velto, will you please lead us? Thank you, Commissioner. Closing Agenda Item 1 and moving to Agenda Item 2. Michelle, can we get a roll call, please?
Harris Armstrong.
Here.
Manny Becerra.
Here.
Arthur Munoz.
Here.
Carrie Romeyer.
Here.
Alex Felto. Here. Sylvia Villanueva is absent, and J.D. Draculich is absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Michelle. Closing Item 2 and moving to Item 3, public comment. This item is for public comment on any action item or any general public comment.
Members of the public may call into the meeting to provide public comment using the Zoom link provided on the agenda, specifically https://links.reno.gov/3 capital Q QV QJJ. It should be noted for those in the audience that comments are to be addressed to the Planning Commission as a whole. Comments heard under this item will be limited to 3 minutes per person and may pertain to matters both on and off the Planning Commission agenda. Please note that the Planning Commission may not take action upon any matter not agendized for possible action on today's agenda. When you are called on for public comment, please state your name for the record and begin speaking. The timer will begin when you say your name, and you will be afforded 3 minutes. If you are an attendee in the Zoom meeting and would like to make public comment at this time, please raise your hand. Lastly, while in this room, please be respectful. Warnings will be issued by the presiding officer if there is disruptive behavior, and you will be asked to leave chambers if the behavior continues. With that, we did not receive any request to speak forms for this item. No one registered to speak on this item via Zoom. We did receive a voicemail, but we are not playing that tonight due to the vulgarity, but the comments were related to the traffic issues in the North Valleys.
Thank you, Michelle. Do we have anyone in the chambers wishing to speak under general public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll close Item 3 and move on to Item 4, approval of minutes. Agenda Item 4, for possible action, approval of minutes from the regular City of Reno Planning Commission meeting on May 1st and May 15th, 2024.
Can we do one at a time, please?
Sure. So backtracking, we'll start with the approval of minutes for the May 1st, 2024 meeting. Are there any questions, abstentions, or discussion items from the commissioners on this?
No, Commissioner Munoz wishes to make a motion to approve.
Okay. Have a motion. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Romero, second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so ayes have it. We're approved. It's unanimous. We'll move to approval of minutes from the regular City of Reno Planning Commission meeting on May 15th, 2024. Are there any questions, abstentions, or discussion items from the commissioners? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Commissioner Becerra, motion to approve.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Munoz, a second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say
Aye.
aye. Okay, unanimously approved. Approval of minutes is closed out, and we can move on to Agenda Item 5, public hearings. Any person who has chosen to provide his or her public comment when a public hearing is heard will need to so indicate on the request to speak form provided to the secretary. Alternatively, you may provide your comment when Item 3, public comment, is heard at the beginning of the meeting. We'll open Agenda Item 5.1, case number LDC 24-00052, Chisholm Mobile Home Park, MPA, and ZMA.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, Mike Raley, Planning Manager. The applicant has requested a continuance of this item. It will be held at the June 20th Planning Commission hearing. We will need to open public comment in case we have anybody that wishes to speak tonight.
Okay, so public comment on this item is open for anyone wishing to speak. Do we have anyone wishing to speak in the chambers? Any requests to speak forms?
I did not receive any requests to speak forms, no voicemails, and no correspondence received for this item.
Okay, no one on Zoom?
No.
Okay. Seeing none, we'll close Agenda Item 5.1 and move to Item 5.2, LDC 240015 NV Energy Utility Corridor, and we'll begin with a presentation from staff.
All right. Good evening, Commissioners. For the record, I'm Nathan Gilbert, Principal Planner with the City of Reno. This is the wrong PowerPoint. There we go. All right, let's get back at it. This is a request for a conditional use permit to construct a 120 kilovolt overhead electrical transmission line, which is considered a major utility, and to allow for associated hillside development. The overall site length is 12 miles, would connect two existing power substations located just west of the state line, with a 10.9 mile portion running through Nevada, going through Verdi, all the way up to Cold Springs and connecting to the Border Town substation. This conditional use permit request is only subject to those portions of the lines that are in the city of Reno. So in this map, that's that cross-hatched area. So this is a conditional use permit for Reno's portion. Washoe County has already approved a special use permit for portions within their jurisdiction. The request is considered a project of regional significance and will require a regional plan amendment before taking effect. The purpose of the line is to increase reliability of power service in West Reno and to avoid overall system-wide failures. The North American Electric Reliability Corporation is the federally authorized standard agency which is requiring an additional line for regional grid resiliency. An environmental impact statement was prepared. It was started in 2011. It was a rigorous process with a final environmental impact statement completed in 2018 with the U.S. Forest Service as the lead agency. The EIS evaluated 5 potential alternatives for the line, including no line, no action, and they selected the Peavine-Poville alignment with some significant mitigations, and this corridor generally follows that EIS Peavine-Poville alignment. As the preferred alternative was chosen after analysis of cultural resource impacts, wildlife habitat, private property issues, visual resources, public comments on the initial draft, public safety, and prioritizing use of existing regional utility corridors. The Forest Service issued a final record of decision in 2019. Just want to make clear that the EIS and the mitigations are only applicable to federal properties. However, the EIS evaluated the region as a whole. So it looked at private properties in Washoe County, Sierra County, California, and the city of Reno. The project scope, again, it's 120 kilovolt above ground transmission line. There are 111 poles and 60 of them are within the city of Reno's jurisdiction. The poles' heights would range from 70 to 105 feet tall in various locations. The span distance between poles averages 800 feet, but can range from 200 to 2,000 feet depending on the terrain or obstructions. Under Reno zoning code, major utilities are allowed in all zoning districts with the approved conditional use permit. As I mentioned, the request does trigger hillside development standards based on the topography of the line route. However, the standards are really not applicable given the minimal grading required for pole structures. Just following the line in Verdi, it comes out from the California substation, crosses the state line. You can see in the map, it's kind of a hodgepodge of county and city jurisdiction. We're going to look at the area as a whole. The line would utilize the existing regional utility corridor in that area. It would actually result in a net pole reduction. There would be 18 poles remaining. 21 existing poles would be removed and 10 added. So within this existing corridor, there'd actually be a net loss of 11 poles. That line runs all the way to the West Meadows subdivision within that corridor. So from the West Meadows subdivision, the line would run north through a parcel under the county's jurisdiction, back into the city of Reno jurisdiction on the westernmost side of the Stan Lucas parcel through open space portion of that area, and then running through unincorporated Washoe County until reaching Cold Springs. In Cold Springs, it runs through undeveloped land in the Stonegate planned unit development and lifestyle home parcels, ultimately connecting to the Alturas Regional Utility Corridor to the north. The applicant is proposing a variation from the alignment to the Peavine-Poville alignment outlined in the environmental impact statement. This map was included in the application's original material for this CUP request, and it illustrates the original contemplation following that alignment in the final environmental impact statement. This alignment's about 0.4 miles east of parcels outside of the southern portion of the Stonegate PUD. The Stonegate PUD was adopted after the EAS was approved. However, the zoning that was there when this was analyzed was large lot residential 1 acre and remains large lot residential 1 acre within the Stonegate PUD in this portion. So this is the proposed deviation. It straddles 4 existing private parcels, one of which is developed. It's about 60 feet higher in elevation than the alternative, and it runs through a heavily forested area. So staff is recommending condition of approval number 9 to maintain the alignment in the environmental impact statement. I want to make clear that the Planning Commission has the authority to deviate from that. Again, that EAS and the final record of decision is non-binding on private properties, but it did analyze this area and take in public feedback, visual resources, and environmental issues in this area in selecting that alignment. As far as master plan, city master plan and regional plan policy guidance, both documents give a hierarchy of 6 choices on where new transmission lines should go. And I highlighted the first 2 because the original alignment in the EIS fits nicely in the hierarchy. They're located in an existing corridor that already contains above ground transmission infrastructure without expanding the corridor width. That's a good portion, almost the entirety out in Verdi, and a significant portion in Cold Springs. The alignment would match with those existing utility corridors. The second priority would be to have it located either in a federally designated corridor or an easement that has an approved preliminary or final environmental impact statement, which would be that original alignment. A deviation from that as proposed would fall within the least preferred option of alignment. So key recommendations for conditions of approval will be condition 5, approval is contingent upon all required regional approvals. Condition number 7, that the construction and maintenance activities be subject to the construction, operation, and maintenance plan. The applicant has agreed to that. That's sort of a companion implementation document to the EIS. It means that the mitigation measures identified in the EIS, it's an operations plan for construction and ongoing maintenance of the corridor. It has detailed plans to mitigate wildlife impacts, vegetation, sensitive plants, general practices, fire safety, ongoing maintenance responsibilities, and the like. And condition number 9 would be to have the corridor match the general alignment as presented in the final environmental impact statement. Next steps, as I said, Washoe County Planning Commission already approved their portion of the special use permit for the unincorporated areas, which would include those Federal Forest Service and BLM parcels. They approved that in May 7th of 2024. Reno's the final step for the conditional use permit, and then both requests would go to the Regional Planning Commission. They'd be reviewed concurrently for a project of regional significance for construction of a transmission line greater than 60 kilovolts. And because this is both Washoe County and the city of Reno have corresponding entitlements, the Regional Planning Commission would sponsor the regional plan amendment, which is required to establish a new utility corridor to the Regional Planning Governing Board. So as conditioned, staff can make all the findings, relying heavily on the robust environmental impact statement. And staff recommends approval with conditions. I'm available for any questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you. Do we have a presentation from the applicant?
Good evening. For the record, Dave Snellgrove. I'm planning manager with CFA Bowman, working here with NV Energy. Where's the clicker? There it is. So Nathan did a great job in going through and covering a lot of this, that we have to go through this on a major utility. This 120 kV transmission power line. It will be a project of regional significance, and the federal government did already review and approve this through a fairly lengthy federal EIS process. That was about an 8-year-long process, started in 2011 and ended in 2019. So this will increase the reliability of power in the West Reno area. Nathan had it in his presentation. I'll reiterate. The NERC, the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, it has mandatory transmission standards that NV Energy is required to meet, and this is part of that. So the current route for electricity basically goes in that V shape down the 395 corridor and then connects in Morristown and then goes back out. And it's a two-way flow, but that's where the power does run. So with this line being added, it would run in between and basically give you an alternate route. So if there was something that was happening over on the 395 route that shut that down, this provides an alternative route where power won't go down to West Reno. It's lesser likely and greater reliability. So 12 total miles of line with 10.9 in Nevada. Running through the city of Reno and Washoe County, with 4.1 miles of it being in the city of Reno that we're looking at tonight. In terms of access road, Nathan mentioned the federal EIS process. There's about 100 stipulations, and the stipulations are equivalent to what you'd call conditions of approval. And part of the stipulations in terms of the access roads is they're required to go back in. Whatever they may have to widen out for access or create for access, they've got to bring those back to what they were before, either in the width of the road so you don't create a super freeway up there, or if there was nothing there before, that they have to go back in and repair that land afterwards. So Nathan had a crosshatch map. This is a purple and green map. The green land is the Forest Service land. That's actually in the county. And then the unshaded area that's just an aerial topo, that's unincorporated Washoe County. It happens to be private. And then the purple areas are City of Reno land. So we're looking at the far north and then down towards the far south in this application request this evening. Nathan mentioned, I'll cover the Verdi area where the line runs east to west. That is an existing regional utility corridor. And then as you get up towards the north, you can see the red line that this runs into and parallels. That's the Alturas corridor up at the north. So the new section of regional utility corridor on the map on the left in the blue circled area, it's the north-south run in between the Alturas power line corridor and the Verdi area. So where it takes that strong kick to the west in Verdi, that's where the existing regional utility corridor is. So looking at the general topography in the area up north, this is just where you come onto the city of Reno, and then you have up in the upper right-hand corner kind of an aerial perspective of the alignment. The Alturas power lines run close to the railroad track. That's the squiggly line going there. Well, that's where we'd marry back in with that line. But the topography as you get into the city of Reno land is not as steep as some of the areas that go over through the Forest Service land that's in unincorporated Washoe County. It starts to flatten out a bit more as you get up towards Cold Springs. Nathan covered, and I appreciate him for covering it, but we'll have a net pole loss in this area. There are 2 river crossings in association with Verdi. Cross the Truckee River 2 times. In this area, there's where the first 14 poles will be, there'll be a net loss of 11 poles. There was already a line running there, and this pole line will be joint circuited up to where it takes that little V there in Verdi, kind of in the middle of the image. One of the lines will break off, and that one continues on in its separate alignment. but it will be joint circuited for a good portion of it running through Verdi. All the pole structures will be constructed of metal rather than wood, so fire danger goes down with those. You don't have pole structures that are going to burn. When we went out to the neighborhood groups, and we went to many different neighborhood meetings, both NABs, a neighborhood meeting, and we also visited the Verdi Community Council. And fire came up quite a bit, and then questions about undergrounding. I'll cover each of those later in the presentation. So this is just a copy of the front cover of the federal approvals. I won't go over that too much, but one of the quotes out of this is, provides the needed benefit of a reliable electric transmission capacity to the west side of West Reno, consistent with the reliability standards that NV Energy is mandated to achieve. The general summary of what the EIS looked at: land use, private property, public health and safety, visual resources, vegetation resources, special status plants, wildlife habitat, and cultural. I'll point out on the wildlife habitat, that came up at some neighborhood meetings as well, in terms of mule deer up in the area. There are requirements that NV Energy can't construct during certain times, and the federal government sets stipulations on that. And part of their stipulations also known as conditions of approval. So it was a very rigorous process that they went through, and a very lengthy process, and looked at a lot of different things, inclusive of this area having burned previously. It was less prone to fire danger. So the different routes that were reviewed, you had the Mitchell alternative that went up more into the forest area over in California. You had the Peavine alternative, the Powville alternative, which actually went over Peavine Mountain, and then you had the combined one, the Peavine-Powville alternative. And the last alternative was a do-nothing alternative to see, what the outcome would be could they meet their standards by doing nothing. No, they couldn't. So the preferred route was that Peavine-Powville. Now, I mentioned this is a very lengthy process. They went through about 8 years in the federal process. NV Energy can't go out and start getting easements, and it doesn't make sense for them to start getting easements on private property until they know what route they're going to have. If they were over in the Mitchell alternative, it's different easements than if they were in the Powville alternative, and each one has some significant differences. So it's only after you get your approval in terms of what the preferred route is that you can in earnest then move out and start dealing with private property owners. So that occurred in 2019. In 2020, the area that we have the adjustment to the alignment, that's when the easements were obtained through that area, about a year after the federal approval. So there's the chosen route highlighted in yellow. I forgot I had that in there. In the Verdi area where it takes the kick, down the bottom end of this photo or this image, there is, that is the existing regional utility corridor. We left those red poles with the orange lines in there. There is an existing transmission line that this has to go over. So some of our taller structures are right here, these two that I have shown. These are in that 105, 100-foot type range, and they get over the line to the north. Now, the line works its way uphill, and I know this is just an image built-in SketchUp, but you can see some of the poles going up. There's one right next to the water, to the pond there, and there's another one a little bit up the hill, but where you actually have them are all the way up the hill. I'm not going to stand here and tell you you're not going to see poles. You're going to see poles. It is what it is. It's a power line. We all like the reliability of our electricity, and they are required, a part of the stipulations, to color these poles so that they start to blend in. And I worked at NV Energy for about 4.5 years, and I really was in tune with poles, and I saw a lot more than I do now. But working on this project again, I'm driving in different areas, and I realized, oh, there are poles there. It never dawned on me. I'm not going to say you're not going to see them, but they will start to blend in, and that won't be your paramount view. So going up the hill, you can see in this, we had the line, or one of the lines in blue, so you could see where all the poles are. So it works up the terrain, as Nathan mentioned, goes across the part of the Lucas property on the far western side. But you can see the elevational difference that you have to maintain. You have to keep a separation to the lines, so crossing over that other transmission line, they have to make sure that they're meeting the safety standards for separation for those lines. This is a view. This isn't, the pole line wouldn't be here. It would actually be on the right-hand side. That's the existing transmission line that'll remain, that this will have to go over. This pole line will take off to the north, which will be the right-hand side of the picture. And this is at the end of Waterville Lane, looking down towards where the line would make its hard right turn and start heading due north. Another view, just kind of where it moves through Verdi. Down here on the bottom right-hand corner is Verdi Elementary School. This, is, as I said before, is an existing utility corridor, and you can see where the orange line branches off with the red pole. That's where we stop being joint circuited, and then one pole line takes off, and this new line will keep going across the river. So in these pictures, these are on the eastern portion of Bridge Street, and the western portion of Bridge Street. Bridge Street hooks around, goes up to the north, and comes back to the south. So this bottom picture, the pole line on the right-hand side of that photo, just right of the public notice board, those poles will be removed. And on the picture on the left-hand side, that's the eastern portion of Bridge Street. That's looking to the west. Poles on the left-hand side will be removed in that picture. And new poles will be put in. This is where we have a net loss. In the section, we have a net loss of 11 total poles that exist today. So I mentioned during the neighborhood meetings that fire concerns came up. You know, the use of steel structures, which I already briefly mentioned, rather than combustible wood is one of the things. Vegetation management program, being on a transmission line, they do get a little bit more care and maintenance than a lot of the distribution lines do, but there is a significant and robust management program that they have to follow. There are protective devices, and I've learned about this through talking to some of the transmission engineers at the power company. Protective devices on the transmission line with high-speed relay equipment that can de-energize the line within 1/10 of a second. So when they feel that there's something going on, it can cut the power. And I believe that it may do that automatically. I believe Laura Clifford is on the phone or is online tonight, that she would be able to answer any questions that you might have about that. Then public safety preparation and prevention programs are another part of their fire risk management. So they do take this very seriously. I know it's been in the news a lot, and it's paramount to people's concerns. They do everything that they can to make sure that fires do not occur for their own liability and the safety of the community. Another issue that we heard in question was, why don't you underground it? Now, I mentioned that we have 2 river crossings going through Verdi. I know nobody likes to look at power lines, but we are in an existing regional utility corridor running through Verdi. It's been there for quite a number of years. And then those 2 river crossings add additional significant challenge, and also a lot of the topography that we do have to go up and over through the unincorporated unincorporated county portions of this line. It was estimated they've undergrounded some other sections, and they see about a 7 to 10 times difference in terms of cost. PUC could decide whether or not that was a required improvement that was a benefit to the whole community, or it could be borne, that those costs could be borne by only the neighbors that benefited. So it could come down to kind of just the Verdi area that would have to pay for that. This is something that the NV Energy folks can talk more about along with fire. They'd have more information. That's it in a nutshell. Now, we have requested that condition 9 be entirely deleted, and there's reasons for that. I mentioned that the federal process was a very long process. Going through that process was 8 years, and after they got done, they went out and they negotiated with the private property owners. In 2020, these 2 areas, Stonegate was in the works, and they ended up ultimately getting their approvals. You can see where you're running through on part of that is some of the more developable areas land. I know it's currently zoned 1 dwelling unit per acre, but the private property owner and then there's another property to the south, those private property owners also have their rights, and the federal government doesn't have a right to say, hey, you have to put it here. So the negotiation process and part of the right-of-way acquisition is very important. They have gone out and they've done what they were supposed to do, and The federal looked at the whole line, and they gave the suggestion on the route. In the federal lands, yes, they do have some say-so. They own a lot of the section of this line. But on the private sections, there is room for negotiation, and that's exactly what happened here. Now, if we were to have that condition, you're basically conditioning an outside party, saying, Heinz Ranch, Stonegate, you have to follow the federal alignment that they approved. That's not right. They have already agreed to an alignment here in this route. I understand that there are concerns about it, and we'll hear about those tonight, but these are copies of the exhibits that are part of the recorded documents. The document numbers are up here. The
Dave, your
dates of
time is up.
recordation are
Sorry.
up here.
The-
Yep, we had some other changes, and I'll be happy to talk about that just with Condition 8, and it was matching them in with the county's approval in terms of hours. Well, thank you very much for your time. I'll be available for any questions.
Thank you. We'll now move to the commissioners for disclosures. Commissioner Munoz, please start.
Commissioner Munoz, I read received emails and no other disclosures.
Commissioner Becerra read, reviewed emails, material, and I'm familiar with the region.
Commissioner Rohrmeyer read and received emails.
Commissioner Velto read and received emails, familiar with the region, and spoke with someone in opposition to the project.
Commissioner Armstrong, I read and received emails. I'm familiar with the project, and apologies in advance, but I do have a long disclosure. Fellow commissioners, I need to disclose the fact that my employer, Estuary Power, has an ongoing business relationship with NV Energy. On this matter, I have sought guidance from the City Attorney's Office pursuant to NRS 281A .420, Section 4, subsection A. The law presumes that the independence of judgment of a reasonable person in the public officer's situation would not be materially affected by the public officer's commitment in a private capacity to the interests of another, where the resulting benefit or detriment accruing to the other person is not greater than that accruing to any other member of any general business, profession, occupation, or group that is affected by the matter. Here I have a commitment in a private capacity to my employer and a pecuniary interest in my employment. Item 5.2 is a request for a conditional use permit for the NV Energy Utility Corridor. The independence of judgment of a reasonable person in my situation would not be materially affected by my commitment to my employer, which has an ongoing business relationship with NV Energy, nor is my pecuniary interest in my employment affected by the request. Because this is not a clear case of disqualifying conflict of interest, I am making this disclosure but do not intend to recuse myself from this item. Please accept this disclosure and lodge it on the record for this meeting and subsequent meetings pertaining to this agenda item. Thank you. We'll now move to public comment. I have several requests to speak forms. We'll start with Lacey Barnett, who is wishing to make a statement in opposition. Please state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Lacey Barnett for the record, and I'm here to oppose the Truckee Meadows Regional Plan Amendment to approve this power line. And what this wants to do is go through a really unique forest area that is rare to Nevada. Not a lot of forest around here. And back there, there's a really unique, very popular multi-use trail system. If you hike, if you trail run, if you ride horses, if you ride dirt bikes, motorized recreation, mountain bike, there are world-class trails that are in this forest area that are right in the dead center of this corridor. And establishing this will mow down the center of this trail system. And that's used by thousands of people, thousands of locals, thousands of visitors that come here, spend money in Reno's economy to, use this trail system. And thousands of volunteers work on these trails, put in their hours maintaining these trails. Grants, private, and nonprofit organizations invest in these trails with public and private funding to maintain these recreational resources in Reno's backyard that are really unique. And I understand that the Forest Service approved this way back in 2019, but a lot has changed in the last 5 years. People have gotten involved. People have invested in this area. People have, there's now been hundreds of thousands of dollars in investment in maintaining these trail systems that are used by lots and lots of people. And there's a legacy project pending by Sierra Buttes Trail Stewardship to expand this trail system, connect it with 15 other mountain communities next door to Reno, Sierraville, Loyalton, Truckee, all that. And because these trails are so popular, we want to connect them to other communities. So this is going to mow right through the center of that, eliminate a huge, huge, huge public resource. And, you're going to be wiping out all these trails. You're going to be scarring a unique piece of Nevada forest. You're going to be destroying years of work by volunteers that have happened all in the last 5 years, all after the Forest Service approved all this. And you're going to be disrupting a major economic impact project that is happening with hundreds of thousands of dollars of buy-in from businesses and volunteers. And I just think that the Truckee Meadows Regional Plan should not be to deforest what very little forest Nevada has and take away outdoor recreation resources that Reno residents use every day, spring through late fall. I think that plan should be to protect them.
Thank you for your comments. Next, we have Lloyd Labard, who would like to speak in opposition.
My name is Lloyd Labard. I was born in Reno, lived here all my life. My kids are fifth generation Reno. Anyway, I'm here to voice my strong opposition, particularly in the misguided decision to pursue the ZAG route instead of a more logical, less destructive original route. This ZAG route not only poses a threat to the natural landscape and beauty of the wildlife in our area, also raises serious concerns about the necessity and cost implications to consumers. Can I show a couple pictures?
Sure.
Okay, that was what their original route.
I don't think
You
we
see that,
have
sir?
the, sorry, one moment.
Michelle, can we get the
Can
overhead?
we get the overhead, please?
Okay, you see that circled area? That's what we were talking about, what he talked about, that the developer, he doesn't want that route that he originally, that they recommended, because he wants more land that he can develop. Yet he had promised all of us in videos and everything else, he was going to make hiking trails up there. It was going to be a beautifully planned community. That's all gone. He wants to put in warehouses. Okay, now I'll show you the new route. Which you can see, okay, see the red line above? That was the original route. Now this ZAG route, I'm calling it, okay, he talked about reduction in poles. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 new poles versus 4 the other way. So there is no reduction in poles, there's an increase in poles. Okay, the decision to deviate from the initial advised linear route in favor of the disruptive ZAG pattern is not only illogical, it is blatantly unnecessary. This route contradicts the original vision and fails to align with the logical progression of the power lines, making it wasteful and costly endeavor that will ultimately burden the consumers with the expense. The community, as a community, we cannot stand idly while such decisions are made without accountability. We demand that the power company recommends its choice route and opts for a more appropriate, environmentally friendly option that respects the needs of this community and protects the wildlife in this area that call their home. My kids' trust house is there. That's that JJ Trust. That's my kids. We did $80,000 worth of tree removal to remove trees that were affected by bark beetles, included it. Okay, that's what we did to protect that area up there. Now you're going to come in and mow twice as many trees down for no reason. There's mule deer, there's antelope, there's bear, there's... Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Hey, please no applause during public comment. Thank you. Next, we have Anthony Cassano Labarde, who would like to make a statement in opposition.
Yes, my name's Antone Labarde. I just want to hit some bullet points with you guys. And yeah, we did a lot of, we acquired that property right around the time they were collecting, you know, their easements, whatever. I'm sure the guys that were selling, I'm sure they got those easements and they did all that. But the whole time we were told that they would never use that route or they would never need to use those easements. It was an emergency thing. They were not transparent with us. They did not reach out to us. They did not reach out to any of the property owners in our area. I do not feel we're well represented by our ward either. You know, that's a personal feeling to me. You know, I don't know what route we have to go, but we have to get together as property owners and talk about this. The biggest thing that I'm sad about is the effect it's going to have on the wildlife, and I'm talking about the habitat, the ecosystem. You know, you can go through that environmental impact study, and it needs to be re-reviewed. And you guys need to look at it, because I will tell you, even the amount of bird species that are up there is unbelievable, and it's beautiful, and it has there's no reason to go through that side of those trees. And my thing with this whole, the development, whatever they do with Stonegate or whatever they're gonna do, they should have to bear the burden of that. Not us, not original homeowners, not people that were there before that didn't have any awareness of any of this. You know, it's a huge increase. They can throw whatever they want on numbers on how it's gonna, you know, how they can prevent fires. The research I've done, regardless, third party, it increases it 10 to 12%. Okay? They raised our home insurance. They raised our fire insurance. The people on the California side are getting their fire insurance pulled. So it's a big deal to us. You know, the negative impact, just not on us, on our neighbor's property. We were there first, you know, it's important. Like I said, the lack of transparency. They didn't reach out to us. They did not do a good job of contacting any of the property owners. We didn't even know about the change in the direction. We sat there with these guys. They showed us the regular route with no jog in it, nothing like that. Explained to us that they were just doing what they were doing, and we went along with it. I'm upset. Obviously, I apologize. Like I said, lack of representation. I mean, how many people are actually here from Cold Springs? You know, I just don't get it. And they didn't do a good job of explaining things. And yeah, ESA needs to be reviewed. And how exactly, and I heard their statements on how it's going to affect the city, but can they throw some numbers behind this and actually show us what it is? How are we going to benefit? How does Cold Springs as a community benefit from this power line system? Are they going to do something on the side for us? Because the power runs out there all the time. It drops all the time. We have a generator out there. We use it all the time. Stonegate should have the burden.
Thank you for your comments. Next, we have Austin Slaughter, who would like to make a statement in opposition.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Austin Slaughter. I'm here on behalf of the Fenimore Law Firm, and we represent Julie Labarde, and as mentioned, the JCJJ&J Trust, which owns 2 impacted parcels in the Cold Springs Valley, which is on the backside of Peavine. As was mentioned in the earlier public comment, a lot of the Cold Springs residents were not involved in this process. A lot of the focus has been on Verdi, and as you saw through the presentation, Cold Springs was kind of addressed towards the end of that presentation. So there's a feeling amongst the community that there was not enough public comment for those impacted residents. And so what we're specifically looking at is that what we're calling the ZAG, or there's whatever term you want to call it, but it's what that condition 9 that was mentioned in the presentation is what we're basically having issue with, because that now runs directly next to our client's property, about 40 acres of residential property as well. So we have some lingering questions kind of about the process and how that specific deviation came about. So when was that specific path of the deviation selected? It's our understanding that there were 3 alternative paths, including ones that did not directly abut the 40-acre residential parcels, and as recently as January of this year, the path of transmission line was different than now proposed. However, at some point that was altered to include that ZAG. And in addition, what considerations were made related to the placing the transmission line in that final selection? Because now that ZAG is now in a heavily forested area, whereas the prior proposal was not through kind of a more heavily forested area. So that's going to affect the wildlife. I believe there's a plant species called the Weber's Ivacia, which is a threatened species, which is included in that area. Obviously, wildfire is always a risk, especially with heavy winds in that area. And I reviewed the environmental impact statement, and some consideration specific to the Reno City Council, or the Planning Commission, apologies, is your tree code, specifically sections 18.12.504 and 505. Was there a tree mitigation program in place? Is there a tree replacement program in place? We haven't seen those, and that hasn't been communicated to the property owners. So again, we believe that there was just not enough public input for the Cold Spring Valley residents specifically, and you know, we should kind of include those comments and consider not eliminating consideration 9. So I thank you for your time and consideration. It's requested that the information regarding the apparent changes and issues to the transmission line be addressed before any further action is completed by this commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have, please no applause during public comment. It's a decorum issue I don't want to ask again. Thank you. Next, we have John Dobra. I apologize if I botched the last name. Wishing to make a statement in favor.
Did I say John Dugan?
Is it, I may have just had a hard time reading your handwriting. John Dugan, in favor? In opposition?
Opposition.
Okay. Well, you can still make your comment in opposition. The form just had it in favor.
Yeah, my name is John Dugan, and I live out in
I'm
West
sorry, could
Reno.
you state your name at the microphone, please? Thank you.
My name is John Dugan. I live out in West Reno on Leroy. Been here since 1982. Families recreate up in that area, so when I heard about this, it was kind of an interesting, deal. Didn't quite understand what was going on. You've got a bunch of different options to go around Peavine through a non-wooded area, and you're looking to go right through the only woods in the Reno area, in the Peavine area. It's incredibly unique wildlife area. I think maybe you guys need to go up there and take a look yourselves, but that's the deal. They have options to go around Peavine where there's no woods, there's no wildfire. I mean, we have hellacious winds here. If there was a wildfire concern, it would be uncontrollable. You'd lose that whole area like that. Basically, it's a wildlife thing, and for me, I'd like you guys to take another look at that. Definitely oppose this, okay?
Any of your comments? Next, we have Ann Swader, who would like to make a statement in opposition.
I'm Ann Swader, and I'm a 40-year resident of Washoe County, and I ride my horse in the beautiful area of the western slopes of Peavine, where these power lines will cut a large swath through. The area is enjoyed by all Washoe County residents as this specific area contains a unique alpine forest landscape, which is used by all forms of recreationists. The Peavine Maze trails are maintained by volunteers who invest a lot of time and money. Plus, these huge power lines are going past 14 homes in Verdi. Who wants a 105-foot pole in their backyard? What will that do to the property values? I would not buy a house with that in my view. How will they keep the lines from arcing from high winds since they are running through a forest? Fires have been started in Reno from lines arcing. The placement of the utility corridor from Verdi to Bordertown Station will make a huge scar through the scenic Peavine maze of trails, ruining this recreation area. These utility lines would also have to be maintained, and access roads would be cut through for that purpose. Recreational areas are getting less and less in the Truckee Meadows. Don't make this alpine forest area another victim of scenic disaster that no one can enjoy. There is an alternative for this corridor. It is a better option. Please preserve this beautiful and scenic recreational area. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next, we have Nathan Vick, who would like to make a statement in opposition.
Hi, my name's Nathan Vick. Basically what everyone else has said so far, this is a very rare alpine forest that we have up here. I've only been here for a couple years, and this land is a huge part of moving here. The off-road community is huge here in Reno. I mean, the amount of money it brings in is very significant. So for that area to to be devastated by these power lines cutting through that trail system would just be a huge deal to the off-road community. We have about 5 different motorcycle dealerships. They sell UTVs, ATVs, dirt bikes, all this kind of stuff. So that area is very special to the off-road community. Like she said, as well as equestrians, hikers, all kinds of different people. It's a very special area. Because they have other options to go around in non-wooded areas, I think that would be a better option. It seems kind of weird that they would go through the wooded areas. I assume it's going to be more expensive to go over the top of Peavine versus going that way. But it would be a much safer option in terms of fire danger and also taking away resources that we have here in Reno. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next, we have Kurt Gensheimer, who would like to make a comment in opposition.
Thank you, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Kurt Gensheimer. The NV Energy Powerline project will have a negative visual and community impact on the residents of Verdi. As a longtime resident of Verdi and a program manager for the Sierra Buttes Trail Stewardship, a nonprofit trail building organization, I'm currently managing 2 different state-funded grant programs in the Peavine Maze network of single-track trails. The proposed Peavine-Poville alignment will run straight through the middle of this rare alpine forested corner of Nevada that's very popular for multi-use recreation, including motorized use, negatively impacting multiple trails in the system. Considering there's very few legal motorized single-track networks in the entire state of Nevada, on top of the fact that there are very few alpine forest settings in Nevada where legal single-track exists for multi-use and motorized recreation, the Peavine Maze is a very special place, and cutting a 100-foot wide swath through aspen groves and pristine alpine forest for a power line that will ruin the visual aesthetic of this entire area, not to mention create increased wildfire risk in a dry forest already susceptible to devastating fires. People move to the Verdi area for its incredible recreational access to national forest lands. In the May 7th Washoe County staff report, it stated that this project will have a less than significant impact to the aesthetics and the community character of Verdi. As a longtime resident of Verdi and a daily user of trails on public lands in Verdi, specifically the Peavine Maze, I couldn't disagree more. The trails may not be in visual sight from Old Highway 40 in Verdi, but they are an essential component of the Verdi community. Trails and access to them is the main reason why I moved to Verdi in the first place. In a time where development is swallowing up Verdi on all sides, this Powerline project is just the latest in a long line of community-altering developments. I am not opposed to the concept of a power line, as I understand its need, but I am opposed to the Peavine-Poville alignment of this power line. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Next is Julianne Botter, who would like to make a statement in opposition.
Thank you, Commissioners. Julianne Zotter for the record. Sorry, I have bad handwriting.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're going to hear all night all these reasons to oppose it, and I don't have any new reasons, just adding on to it. something I think that is really important to consider, in the presentation, it was noted that in order to mitigate fire risk, they do this vegetation management plan. That plan is literally mowing down and creating a scar underneath these power lines. And you can see it go right over the mountain when you're on Highway 80 heading west. You can see a big old scar right through the middle of the mountain where they're already doing this vegetation management. So that would just be an additional thing through this very unique section of forest that you've heard all about. I think it's really important to note too that Peavine Mountain historically was completely forested at one point. And when, Reno became Reno, they logged it to decimation. And this little tiny patch of forest is all that's left of that ancient forest. And this little tiny aspen grove is the only aspen grove in Nevada that on that side of the mountain. Running a power line right through the middle of it and then continuing to mow it down every year after year after year for fire mitigation when we could just put it in a non-wooded area. I would like to see the actual economic comparison of, a longer line around it versus this line through a wooded area that, you have to continually maintain each year. I think that's all. I'll yield the rest of my time.
Thank you. Next, we have Don Schmidt, who would like to make a comment in opposition.
Good evening, Council. For the record, my name is Don Schmidt. My comments are very similar to most of the others here today. I just want to say that I am a longtime OHV enthusiast, living in this area only for about 10 years now, but part of a very, very large group. So when I speak, I feel confident that I'm speaking for this larger group. There's a group here in this area called Reno Area Dirt Riders, and there's over 4,000 members in this group. And all these people, just like the others were saying, are using this trail network up on Peavine, all different forms, OHV, mountain bike, equestrian, runners, all of that stuff. My friends and I, we've spent countless hours volunteering and advocating for sustainable OHV routes in Peavine. And over the years, we've raised a substantial amount of money to maintain those trails and improve them, and like Kurt was saying, to expand upon them. I understand the need for utilities in the area, but the proposed utility corridor definitely poses some problems. We all know what can happen when power lines fail in the forest. We've seen that in Greenville and other places in California. It's devastating. So adding power lines through this forest obviously is creating a fire risk in an already risk-averse area. On top of that, it's going to be visually impacted, like Kurt was saying, in the Verdi area and all the way across the mountain. The gentleman from NV Energy had mentioned that alternative routes are underground. Alternatives were too expensive, but I would probably ask him and his company, how expensive would it be if this power line were to burn down this last little remaining forest? That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next, we have Terry Rupert wishing to make a statement in opposition.
For the record, my name is Terry Rupert. I've lived in Reno 45 years. I've owned property that will be affected by this zigzag alignment that's being proposed. It's out on Stolot Lane. It's parcel 2. I'm representing myself and Mentor Investments, LLC. I won't be repetitive to the comments that have already been made. I ask you to please go out and look at this proposed zigzag route. It is disturbing, to say the least. My other comment is that we have worked cooperatively with developers involved with Stonegate. We negotiated with them some right-of-ways to use access, emergency access through, there's 6 lots out there. Emergency access through that property if needed. I also was contacted by Stonegate. Apparently, there is an endangered species, which is on my lot and also somewhat in Stonegate. They wanted to buy the environmental rights to the endangered species that is particularly on my lot more than any other. And so I kind of feel like we really tried to cooperate with the Stonegate development, and I have had no notice of any of this. I had to find out from my neighbors. I don't live out there, it's undeveloped land at the moment. I've had to find out from others. And Nathan, I know we've been playing phone tag. We didn't actually get to speak, but I'm a little confused. I saw 2 different maps with some various opposed routes, so I'm a little unclear. Are we still looking at a couple different routes? It seems that maybe we are. Is that true? No? Okay, well, I didn't get to talk to Nathan, so I apologize for my lack of knowledge on this, but this zigzag route, it affects all of us. There's 6 different parcels that we bought out there with the intentions of building. This is going to greatly devalue all of those properties, and I know they can't talk to anyone about property values until they've decided on a route, but, I mean, shouldn't we have at least been included in the conversation? We worked really nicely and cooperatively with Stonegate. They've given us no consideration, and I will leave it at that, but I do oppose it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next, we have Ken McNeil wishing to make a statement in opposition.
Ken McNeil. I don't think you have it quite right. I put a question mark next to opposition. So I don't want to say that I'm opposed, but I'm certainly not in favor. Okay, so I had a struggle with that. Okay, a number of people have talked about a fire issue, but we haven't heard anything from the Reno Fire Department about any concerns with this power line. And I would think those are the experts. We should hear from the Reno Fire Department if they have concerns about this power line. And we haven't heard that tonight. I don't know how you can make a decision with all the questions raised about fire and you don't have an expert from Reno Fire Department giving you an expert opinion. Also, evidently Stan Lucas has not signed an easement for their property. There is some letter from Stan Lucas, but there's no copy available to the public. The public has a right to see this letter, to see what Stan Lucas has written, whether or not they're going to agree to this easement, what their conditions are, or what's the status of this letter. But there's nothing that we can read. I also think undergrounding is a good idea. And if it's too expensive, is it possible to put in the conditions of approval that Nevada Energy will apply for a grant so that they could possibly underground the line? I also want to say that the people from Cold Springs who are voicing their concerns, they've convinced me that it doesn't make sense to change the route. And so I don't know how the Planning Commission is going to vote, but I don't live in Cold Springs, but I'm convinced that they make sense. Also, Blake Smith has sold a piece of property in along the I-80 and the Truckee River. He sold that property recently, within the last few days, to Nevada Energy. And I'm told the reason he sold that to Nevada Energy is so they could put a substation in. I'm also told that this substation would be somehow connected to this power line project, and that hasn't been talked about tonight. I know it's just recent, but still, if that substation is part of this project, that should be presented to this Planning Commission, and I don't think you should make a decision if that's the case. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next, we have Marvin Small wishing to make a statement in opposition. Oh, apologies. Well, we have it on the record. Thank you, sir. And with that, those are all the public comment forms that I've received. Is anyone else in the chambers wishing to make a statement on this item? Seeing none. Do we have anyone on Zoom?
Okay, we have some people that registered on Zoom, but I just wanted to state that we did receive correspondence that was forwarded to the Planning Commission and it has been entered into the record, and no voicemails were received. So I think we have Tom. He's raising his hand. If anybody else on Zoom wishes to speak, please raise your hand so we can bring you over. So go ahead and bring him over.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please state your name and you have 3 minutes to make your comment.
Yes, hi. Tom Van Ritten for the record, resident of Ward 4 here in Reno, soon to be Ward 1. Just wanted to let you know I'm expressing my personal opinion only as a resident of Reno and in no way reflects the position of my employer. To say I'm in opposition to this would be an understatement. This is a horrible idea. A vote for this is a vote against outdoor recreation in the area of Reno. We need to find a different path and get it done without destroying forest. You guys had an alternative that would have worked. There was that trail that route that popped up over Peavine on the east side. If you've never seen that area back there where the maze is, it is a gem. It is a very special place that is very unique to Washoe County and specifically to Reno. It's beyond beautiful, and it's about to get a major renovation that's going to make it more attractive to locals and tourists. Power lines ruin views. Look at those on the backside of Bird Eye Peak, between Bird Eye Peak and Stampede. Go look at the hills on the south end of Carpenter Valley, over by Tahoe Donner. These projects ruin their views, and we have an amazing one. It is such an asset to the people of Reno. But I want to talk to you guys about the effect on tourism. Tourism's a major component of the Reno economy. $4.3 billion of economic impact in 2022. $3 billion of economic impact in 2023. And you know what the destination is trying to market itself as? Is the premier outdoor destination. Well, guess what? They are building this amazing trail system running all the way from Reno up above Susanville. It's called the Connected Communities Project. And you know why they're doing it? For the economic impact to the towns and cities of the Lost Sierra. Within 5 years, this area is going to be an international destination for those that are into mountain biking and moto. And believe it, those are major segments within the outdoor recreation market. People are going to have a choice how they come in and experience this trail system. They're going to come through the Sacramento airport, and they're going to pop up over, going to drop all their money between Sacramento and the cities in the Lost Sierra, or we're going to bring them in here to the Reno Tahoe International Airport. The RTAA is going to benefit, the city of Reno is going to benefit, the residents of Reno are going to benefit. And all we have is this area of the maze. Bird Eye is the access point for Reno. That's what we have on the plan, and it's a very, very special asset. So I ask you guys to reconsider. Power lines are great. We need them. I get it. Hop over Peavine. Nobody would even notice, like a few missing sagebrush and stuff. It's not going to be that big of a deal. But where you guys are planning to put this now will ruin one of the most unique and beautiful assets that Reno has for outdoor recreation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And next we have Brandon on the line. Brandon, can you hear us?
Yes. Hi, Commissioners.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Could you please state your name for the record, and then you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Yes. For the record, my name is Brandon Kersey. I would like to address those in this meeting that have the ability to change the outcome of this proposed NV Energy project. I'm a lifelong resident who grew up in the North Valleys, and I have lived in Reno my entire life of 44 years. I'd like to express my disapproval for the proposed routing of these utility lines through the last forested off-road recreational area in Reno. This area provides recreational opportunities not available anywhere else to Reno residents. What makes this area so special? The thick forested area provides recreational users shade and one-of-a-kind beauty for our area. The tight trails that flow between the thick forest trees are simply amazing. This area and marked trail systems are the only place in Reno that can be ridden in the heat of the summer months. Desert trails are too hot and without shade are unusable in the summertime. By eliminating this area, you basically have eliminated a lot of that recreational availability. By installing these utilities right through the managed trail system, it will forever ruin the recreational aspect of the area. We get tourism from folks that come here specifically to ride these trails. I met and rode the trail system last Sunday with a guy from Alaska, for example. Never been there, and I showed him around, and we had a great time. He's going to come back and probably bring his friends. Beyond that, this will forever destroy the pristine aesthetic of the area. When you go to a national park and you have a picnic, do you want to sit and stare at 100-foot tall power lines and 100-foot cleared ground? I don't think so. The power lines will need to have clear-cut access forever preserved around them and destroy the use that the single-track riders use and enjoy. The large area surrounding them will remove a large path of old-growth pine trees and aspen. These overhead lines also require a road for maintenance. The hard work of many organizations and the donated money will be all for naught, as the trail system they fought so hard to maintain will be gone. Being a born and raised resident, I have been slowly stripped of recreational activities I've grown up enjoying in the area. I used to go duck hunting with my father in the South Meadows area, and I watched as they brought in large amounts of backfill and ruined the natural swamplands and built track homes on top. I used to be able to ride out my backyard from Lemon Valley all the way to Pyramid Lake. Now land has been taken by Indian Colony and routes have been blocked off. I know there's plans to build a larger road in that area, which will also lose further riding area. Just recently, access to BLM land from Rattlesnake Mountain has been blocked off for development on the east part of town, right by my house. This trail system is one of the last great recreational areas I frequent. Isn't that what you are promoting the city for, outdoor recreational opportunities? There are becoming fewer and fewer of these. Can we not leave some pieces of the natural habitat untouched?
Brandon, your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Matt, and I just wanted to remind people on Zoom, if you wish to speak, please raise your hand now.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Could you please state your name for the record? And you have 3 minutes.
Yeah, for the record, my name is Matt Carpels. I'm in opposition to the proposed alignment. Not going to repeat what anyone else has said, but want to reiterate the beauty and value that the Peavine Maze and the associated trails brings to our area. And it seems like there's a simple solution just to reroute around the forest. So I'm in favor of trying to find one of those solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. And nobody else raised their hand on Zoom, so I think we're done with public comment.
Okay. Go ahead and close public comment and move it back to the commissioners for questions. Commissioner Velto?
Nate, I got some questions for you. So I want to talk most in this line of questioning about condition number 9. So there's a line in the staff report that says staff would prefer condition number 9. Why is that? Why does staff oppose removing condition number 9? And if so, what are the factors in the analysis that you think are not satisfied if condition number 9 is removed?
Nathan Gilbert, Principal Planner. I think the robust nature of the EIS with that alignment, it analyzed that area comprehensively. It analyzed views. It analyzed the protected species of concern, tree preservation, and the like. That's where that alignment came from. As I mentioned, the original application material didn't even show this deviation. The application was submitted in September and it was brought up in March. So that map that I showed was actually from the original, which was done in January of 2020. And then that revised easement with the Heinz Ranch Company, Stonegate, was done in spring of 2020. So we don't have the information. We don't know how many trees are going to be felled, with this revised alignment. We don't know if there's protected species. The environmental assessment was done with the alignment as proposed, and that's the information that we have. If an alternative, the zigzag, as folks have been calling it, staff doesn't have any point of reference to really fully vet environmental impacts.
I have a few questions on this. Do you mind if I?
Yeah, you can
Chair, ask you
continue.
these? So, do you think that the proposal to remove the condition would then not be in compliance with the FEIS?
It doesn't need to be. For the purposes of this body, that EIS is advisory, right? That was the comprehensive analysis. It's non-binding on private land. Does that answer your question?
Sorry, let me ask that question a different way, because I think I asked it poorly. Given what's being proposed now to remove condition number 9 and have a zigzag, as it's being called, is that consistent with what the EIS has, with the EIS, in your opinion?
No, it's not.
And just to be specific, what part of the analysis are we, so if we were to say that we think condition number 9 is necessary and what's proposed was not appropriate, in your opinion, what findings would we be reaching that conclusion under?
I have to look at my findings list.
I appreciate it. This is a very voluminous
I can tell you, as I
record,
highlighted in the presentation with the master plan and regional plan policies, it's policy guidance, but that zigzag would be the rank number 6 on preferred alignments, as opposed to the EIS alignment, which would be 1 and 2. I think that would be, staff's concern would be making the finding for CUP finding number 2. And condition number 5 and 6.
Thank you. I have some questions for the applicant, but if anyone has questions on this topic for Nathan, I don't want to take up time, or I don't.
May I ask a quick question? And I would appreciate maybe this is even a legal clarification.
Yeah, go for it, Commissioner Rohrmeyer.
I'm curious about this private land. You know, when you have an FEIS and a record of decision, these are connected actions, even if they're are on private land. So would that not apply? I mean, there seems to be, I would look for some clarification here, because I do think that there's sort of a federal, the connected action. I think some clarity around that could be helpful.
Jasmine Mate, for the record, you're correct that there is connected action. The EIS is only binding on the public property, not on private property. Nonetheless, this alternative or this deviation wasn't analyzed at all. And so I think what Nathan was saying is that he has no basis on which to either recommend or deny the deviation.
Okay, so would you mind if we ask the applicant really quickly, following up on that, is the plan or the coordination with the Forest Service to get a DNA on the FIES decision?
Mark Sullivan with NV Energy. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commission members, for the opportunity to be here tonight and for you to review our project. I know it's a pretty massive project in the perspective of how much documents that you have to go through and review, so we appreciate your time and diligence. So to answer the question with regard to when they did the FEIS, they study that route, but on private property, that doesn't extend out into private property. Now, in our case, we're going to go study it. We've already talked to the Forest Service, and we've talked about that deviation, because we can't dictate, nobody else can dictate where you're going to put it on somebody else's private property. We went and obtained that easement. We obtained those easements in 2019. They were recorded in 2020. I mean, you've heard Labard get up and speak. They purchased their property subject to those conditions. Actually, one of the pieces of property they purchased has the new alignment on it. So where the alignment originally went, it moved over. And now it goes a different way. Well, that's the property they bought. It was subject to that. So they knew, or they should have known. They have an attorney that could show up here tonight. They certainly could do the due diligence and figure out where this alignment was. It's the first we've heard of it. As Nathan said, and as Mr. Snellgrove said, we've been working on this since 2011. There was 4 alternatives that were studied. All of those were eliminated for all the issues that were illuminated in the EIS. This was the route that had the least amount of impacts to people. And any time that you have a power line, it's not my first one. We've done a few of these. if I take it away from where you don't like it and I put it over where you are, you're not going to like it. That's just the way it is. People don't like to have that stuff. They're like, hey, it's somebody else's backyard, not my backyard. And that's fine. This wasn't a NV Energy route. This wasn't it was a federal process. It was a public process. The EAS states, they had several meetings. They weren't conducted by us. There were meetings that were conducted by the Forest Service. They invite the public out, take all their input, put all that. What an EIS is, it's stating that there's impacts. So that's what EIS is for, is to look at what those impacts are and to mitigate those impacts. And that's what the EIS has done. I mean, wildlife, I didn't hear anybody talk about the mule deer habitat up there, but there's mule deer that go through there also. I mean, we've contributed $900,000, I don't know when that was, several years ago to the fund, so they can help treat that. And all of the things, if we're doing, actually, I'll stop there, because I think, did I answer your question?
I was curious if the Forest Service was going to allow that under like a DNA, or if they had a more involved analysis with the ZAG route.
Well, the route that goes around, that hasn't been analyzed. Although Stonegate has a pretty good idea of what's there. We have a pretty good idea of what's there. We're going to work with the Forest Service to be able to amend our application. And so at the least, what I would like you to do if you're in reviewing of the project, instead of saying condition 9, it says exhibit, it refers to the FEIS and then it says exhibit D. Replace exhibit D with or any amendment or concurrence with the Forest Service. And that would give us an opportunity at least to go analyze that route and see what's out there. But I think you guys know what happens with the EIS. You analyze it, and then you either mitigate it or you avoid it. So, I mean, those are pretty much the two options that we're going to have. The Weber Vacia up there, they actually set aside, I think the Ruperts actually mentioned it, that they wanted to try and acquire some rights for their Weber Vacia, but Stonegate set aside, I don't know how many acres, a huge parcel of land up there for Weber Vacia itself. And so they set that aside, put a conservation easement on it. And so they've done a lot of that. Trees, the same thing. They did it on the other side of the parcel where they have a huge area there. So, we're going to go through the process and we're going to treat it or avoid it. It's going to be one or the other. So we are going to work with the Forest Service. This isn't like the last opportunity. We're looking at that. And I'm sure Mr. Raley knows how that process works also. He can confirm that.
Commissioner Velto, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm going to be like super blunt with how I'm thinking, because I want to give you an opportunity to kind of respond to this before we go into public comment. Nathan is very good at his job, and I tend to defer a lot to Nathan when he tells us his views on projects. I'm a little concerned that he's saying they haven't had an opportunity to evaluate this deviation. And it sounds like you want to basically have us condition it and then defer to what subsequent people, defer to an amendment that we're not able to review. And I guess I'm a little uncomfortable with that. So help me process this when we have Nathan telling us that they haven't had an opportunity to review this deviation and make an assessment of it. And I'm hearing a bunch of public comment about potential fire concerns or other concerns in the area. So just help me, what is your response to that?
Well, typically they wouldn't look at private property. So the analysis that occurs at the federal level. So he's reviewing the FEIS information, right? The document that was prepared over the course of those 8 years. And when it's not going to be any different. We're going to produce the same type of material, that same document. And if it says no, you have something in the way here and you can't go through that, then we can't go through it. But usually you can either mitigate it or avoid it. So maybe it changes it a little bit or something. Our poles, when you think about this isn't like a typical development. We're going to go through and we're going to grade a bunch of stuff and we're going to put a building on it and it's going to be, 50,000 square feet of grading. Our poles, they're about this big around. So you're going to cut, a 4-foot hole in the ground. And it's the same with trails and recreate and those types of things. I mean, we have a maintenance road that we'll put in along the transmission line so we have access to maintain our poles. But the reality of it is we're not going to restrict anybody from doing anything up there that they're already doing. So I think that the idea that any impacts are going to be addressed. And so we're just not going to be able to move forward unless we do that. So that's why I was asking you if you say whatever, I mean, you're agreeing with, I didn't hear Nathan say and Nathan is sharp. I've known Nathan for a long time. He's very bright, and so very thorough, does a great job. He's actually great to work with. He's, so I didn't hear him say anything that said, I don't agree with any of this stuff in the FEIS. In fact, he's doing the opposite. We're saying, hey, we need to alter this route a little bit. And he's like, no, I agree with everything in the FEIS. So if the FEIS, if we go back to them and say, here's the route that we picked, we want to do the analysis for this easement. This is a private property owners. The FEIS doesn't apply to private property owners. So the private property owner's gone the extra mile and said, hey, we'll let you come on our property and do this analysis. And so a lot of times when we pick a route, which we didn't pick, right? This was a federal process. This was vetted out, over the course of 8 years. And when that route got picked, I mean, we have to go in and talk to these owners. And one of the individuals you mentioned, Lucas, we got an easement from Mr. Lucas. We have that easement. But anyway, we have to go talk to those guys, and we're beholden to negotiate with them. The only option that we have is condemnation. And I'm sure your city attorney will tell you it's not a pleasant process. We don't want to go through that process. We don't want to take people's property. So we go to the property owner and go, hey, can you work with us? And these guys said, you know what, this is developable land. Here's what our zoning is, large lot residential. We have a master plan or a planned unit development. Here's how many lots we can get in there. If you guys put this across there, it was about 4.75 acres, the original alignment that would take from his property there. And so you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars that it would have cost him in his development. So we're, okay, well, where can we go? And we developed that with him. We developed it with Terralac, who's the guys that own the property before the Labards did. So we got that easement from them. And then when they bought that property, I mean, it's subject to that easement. And so I understand you don't like it, but that's the way it is. I mean, I don't like that I have easements on my property for sidewalks either, because it takes up my property. But I bought the property subject to that. So I think that the idea is you're not approving something that is not going to be vetted the same way the balance of that EIS was vetted. It's going to go through that same process. So I would liken it to this. If you guys do a regular special use permit for somebody and you say it has to be under 65 feet, that building, and they say, well, it doesn't work then, we need 75 feet. They don't get the project. Right, you can't go forward. So you can grant SUPs. It's for a special use, right? Something special condition, and that's what this is, I mean, and this is not our doing either. It's like what we want to go out and build power lines. This is NERC, right, and FERC. These are federal agencies who regulate us, and they say if there's 2 lines out there that are feeding these substations, and if both of those go down at the same time, you're going to have an overloading of all the lines out there, and they call it a cascading, and all of it's going to go out. And they're saying you can't be in this position, and they're asking us, why is it taking you 10 years to do this,
What would it mean for the project if we wanted to keep condition number 9 with an approval? What would that look like for you all?
Well, my understanding of the condemnation process, we'd have to condemn the property owner. And when you go to court and we say, hey, we want this piece of property, we have to have it. We actually make a statement. I guess your city attorney can attest to this. We have to make a statement that there's not another option available to us. This is the only option that we can do. Can I get up and make that statement when they already gave us an easement? It's not possible. They're going to go into court and they go, we gave them an option. They chose not to take it. They chose to go right through the middle of our property and damage us. And the financial impacts of that, when you're doing taking somebody's property. I mean, there's some question whether or not, and I mean, this is more of a legal question, but there's some question in NRS 37 whether or not a city can force us to do a taking. So we would have to go take their property to keep on the original FEIS. So, and I believe some of our legal counsel have contacted the city attorney's office about it, but I don't think we've had a lot of discussion about it. But I think the short of it is we didn't pick the route. We don't get the opportunity to modify the route a whole bunch. We have to work with the property owners that are there, and that's the bag we're left with, trying to deal with. Thank you.
Any further questions? I'll go with Commissioner Becerra.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner, both. I'm going to try not to be repetitive here, try to find a theme. I guess this one's going to be for staff first, if that's okay.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Nathan? Hey, Nathan. Excellent job. Prior to this meeting and this being posted, when did y'all sit down with the applicant and to actually review the deviated plan? I guess the one that's being called Zigzag.
Yeah, so again, the application material was originally submitted in September of last year. It was on hold, they needed agreements from Stan Lucas. And I want to clarify, I wasn't aware that they had just a few days ago obtained an easement from Stan Lucas. We were able to move this forward eventually because Stan Lucas signed an agreement that said that they were party to this application, but that the easements would be worked out. That would be conditioned prior to any development. But to my knowledge, before just right now, I didn't even know they had an easement. Regarding this Zigzag, that was, again, the application submitted in September. I had comments to the applicant's representative. It was brought up in passing, we might, change the alignment. And I made it clear in my comments, my staff comments, that, hey, the alignment needs to be set in stone. The conditional use permit is for a specified alignment, so let's get that alignment. I eventually got it over some protracted effort, but that was in March where that was discussed. Probably April, May is when we had this information on the alignment that's included in your staff report packet.
Okay. And do you feel comfortable with what's being presented? Let me rephrase that question. Is the packet before us, the material before us, in correlation to the original alignment or the Zigzag?
With condition number 9, it would be the original alignment.
The original. Okay. So is it fair to say that we're looking at two different things here?
What the applicant has proposed is what we're all calling the Zigzag tonight. That's what they've requested. Staff support is contingent upon condition number 9, which would maintain that original alignment in that particular portion.
Okay. So if we kept COA 9, it would have to be the original alignment.
Correct.
If we agreed to their request to remove COA 9, it could be the deviated if they wish to go that route.
That is what they are requesting.
Okay. And as Commissioner Velto said, you're really thorough and good at your job, so I was just a little surprised when I heard commentary that there wasn't an opportunity for you or staff to properly review the deviated plan, and I was just wondering why. And if you haven't had a chance to thoroughly review it, is it fair to say, and maybe this is a question for the applicant, if the general public has had an opportunity not just to review but be presented with the deviated plan and the impact of the deviated plan or route?
Well, I watched the Washoe County Commission meeting, and the Washoe County staff was presented materials with the original alignment.
With the original alignment?
It's not part of their review. I mean, to be fair, that alignment is in the City of Reno's jurisdiction, but the material presented at the Washoe County Planning Commission showed that alignment.
The original?
The original.
Okay. Thank you so much. And maybe I'll ask the applicant's representative a couple questions.
Yeah, for the record, Dave Snellgrove, and I do want to point out in terms of Washoe County Planning Commission, that original alignment was directly from the graphics in the EIS. When this was originally submitted, and Nathan has mentioned back in September, we initially submitted this. The maps and graphics that I had, and I probably shouldn't have put them into the application because they were already part of the EIS. So there was a confusion aspect there. When this came in, we resubmitted, I think, March 8th to Washoe County and March 11th to the City of Reno, which we're now at the start of June, which is longer than you normally have in going through an application review. Usually it's a couple months to get to Planning Commission. It's been 3 months. This alignment, as was mentioned by Mr. Sullivan, I identified it in my presentation. What we're calling the Zigzag, those two easements were obtained back in 2020. If there was an error that was made on that in not understanding where things were, it was more on me than it was on what the actual request was. And there's been over 3 months, about 3 months of time, which is more than what is typical for things to come to Planning Commission. That alignment is the alignment that we're proposing, is that zigzagged alignment, for lack of a better term.
Great, thank you. If you may, just for a second.
Yeah.
So thank you for that clarification. So so I'm understanding it correctly, the zigzag has been in place, at least from your end, since 2020.
2020 is when the recorded easements are.
Okay, so that's 4-ish years. So since that time, has your end taken the time to present that to the general public as well for feedback, input, in that whole process?
I got involved in the project about, I think it was last July when I first got involved with the project. So NV Energy's been working a lot longer than I have. So I was on the uptick in learning, which Nathan's gotten to learn along with me. So that's probably a more appropriate question for Mr. Sullivan.
Sure, thank you so much. Mr. Sullivan?
Mark Sullivan, for the record, with NV Energy. There's been several public meetings. We had Citizen Advisory Board meetings, we've had Neighborhood Advisory Board meetings, and so there's been lots of opportunity. And when we submitted our application to the City of Reno, like you said, I think the City of Reno's had, and Nathan could confirm it, but I think since March, you guys have had that document. So that shows where our alignment is that we're proposing. So it's, I think what I'm hearing is there's a suggestion that maybe it wasn't publicly vetted and people didn't have an opportunity to review it, but it's been out there for a long time. And with Neighborhood Advisory Board, Citizens Advisory Boards, public meetings in general, I know we've at least had 3 of them. So, and then also it's a public document at the City of Reno.
Great, thank you, Mr. Sullivan. I understand that. I guess what I'm trying to figure out here is where there might be a potential disconnect. While it's not required for the applicant to reach out to us commissioners and chat about things, about their application, usually it's helpful. And since this has been a, 13, 15-year long process, I know I for sure haven't been reached out to just to discuss it, and I've been reached out to discuss far smaller projects. So if I haven't been reached out to, I'm concerned that maybe the general public hasn't been reached out to, but I'll take you at your word that you guys have reached out. Regardless, I am puzzled by some disconnect here. So then my last question is, at least for now, why would you want to remove COA 9?
Because it's not workable. If we have to go by the alignment that's shown there, we can't obtain that property to go across that alignment.
Okay.
Because we already have an alignment that was given to us by that property owner. So we don't have it. We don't feel we have an avenue to go down, even to sue them and condemn the property. We wouldn't win. And it's a very expensive and lengthy process also, but we don't feel we'd prevail in court because they already gave us a piece of property that is viable.
No, I understand that. And I think one of the things we try to balance here, at least I'll speak for myself as one commissioner, is the quality of life factor. While you're probably speaking in terms of financial costs and financial expenditures, we're trying to look at some of the other findings as well. What's the cost to the wildlife? What's the cost to the quality of life for people and so forth? And so that's what we're just trying to figure out here. And so I'm going to take a step back and yield to my fellow commissioner to my left.
Sorry, Commissioner Munoz, please.
Thank you. Nathan, this is going to be for you. If you could, in your presentation, can you pull up the deviation, or the zigzag, and show us exactly where that's going?
Okay, you can see the line in yellow. That, I wish I had a pointer or a mouse, apologize. But where it, heading north, where it veers west and then north again, that's the zigzag.
And what portion of that is in the city limits?
All of it.
The whole entire
The
thing?
entirety.
Is there any other overheads, overviews of that? I want to know exactly what it's going through the middle of, and this does not give us a good indication. So I'm trying to find out exactly what that's going through.
And I'm glad I added that. Okay, so the highlighted parcel is the Stonegate parcel. It's one piece of the larger Stonegate PUD. And so if you can see the home to the west, that's the existing home. Now that power line would run, it would straddle those southern and western property lines and then veer northeast to meet up with the Altura's existing utility corridor. So that line's going to run through a heavily forested area. And again, as I brought up, it's about 60 feet higher in elevation than the original alignment. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that does. one more, and this may be for NV Energy. I want to know what line is coming in from the west, I'm assuming from the Truckee area into Verdi. Where is that line coming from?
Actually, most of the power that we have goes out, but yeah, we have 3 lines over there. There's a 101 line, there's a 102 line, and a 133 line, and all 3 of those lines run west into California.
Coming through Truckee, is that correct?
Going through, yeah, North Truckee substation.
So they're going to be on the north side of the Truckee River, dropping down into Verdi.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I need.
And I would add, when you talk about the forestry, one of the conditions that's in the EIS is that for every acre that we disturb of habitat, we put 3 acres in of habitat. So it's not all just about the finances of things. We look at that, the PUCN looks at us and says, you have to produce the lowest cost alternative. And so that's what we originally developed. But in the end, I mean, if we can't get the project to move forward without making some of these mitigation measures, I mean, we're not gonna have a project. So we have to do what is right.
I think what Mark just said, again, for the record, Dave Snellgrove, what Mark just said in terms of making things finite, and that's been one of the concerns in terms of condition 9. It says, no, follow the FEIS route. There may be another route. If you give some latitude to be able to work with the property owners, if there is something, an alternative that ends up working out for them, we'd appreciate it. If we can't get the FEIS route, as Mr. Sullivan said, the condemnation proceedings would be very questionable on whether they'd even be able to be successful on that. So it could basically kill the project's been going for since at least 2011, and now we're 13 years into it. So in terms of condition 9, if there's something that has some allowance for some alternative, to look at an alternative with the property owner, if it ends up not being the zigzag, that it could be something else. It may not be able to follow that FEIS, and I think there's a high likelihood that it couldn't, because they already said no, they don't want it there.
I have a couple questions. This is actually for the applicant. Maybe, yeah, Mr. Sullivan, you'd be good for this. So, apologies, I understand this is redundant. You've kind of walked through it a couple times, but I want a better grip on the fact pattern of how we got to the zigzag, right? So what I'm hearing is that, on the one hand, the zigzag is kind of a new development. It wasn't particularly well known by staff or maybe the general public, and I understand your assertion to the contrary of that. But how did we get to the zigzag pattern being somewhat of a surprise if that original path that was presented kind of in the materials previously wasn't workable, right? Because it sounds like maybe that hasn't been a viable option for some time, but it was the initial option, and it was what was presented, at least originally, in most of the relevant materials. So can you walk me through, like, how did we get to this position? Because I'm not getting it.
Okay, so the EIS is done by the Forest Service. They look at those 4 routes. They determine that this is the preferred route. They give that to us. That was, I think, 2019, 2018, 2019. And then we go out for the private properties and we go talk to those property owners. And so we have to negotiate with them. The Lucas one was a great example. They were, I don't know if you're familiar with the Lucases. I think your legal team probably is, but, he's very litigious, and so he was the last guy that we got an easement from. But that alignment remained pretty much the same. It's down his parcel line, and the same as this. What they asked for is around the edge of their parcel line. When we came to them and said, "Hey, here's where the alignment is," and they said, "That's going to take a lot of our property, a property that we're going to develop. So we want to put it somewhere else. It's their private property." So we said, "Well, where would you like to put it?" And we negotiated with him. We negotiated with the listeners. We negotiated with the predecessor owners of the Labards. So all of those people came together and said, we all agree with this alignment, and that's how we came up with that alignment. So that was, I think, 2019, April 2019 maybe, or was it recorded maybe in April of 2020. So so it's public record from that time forward. So when we submitted materials to Washoe County and to the city of Reno, that should have been included in those packets. If it wasn't included in those packets, then that was a mistake, and so that's, I think, what Dave was saying is it wasn't included, and I think Nathan said that too. It wasn't included in the initial packet, but when we resubmitted, it was included in that material. So the length of time that you would normally see a project like this, that has been public material certainly long before that on public record, but as a part of the application, it was included in that and made available to everyone. We didn't know that that was the route that it was going to go until the federal government, the Forest Service, gave us our EIS and said, here's where the preferred route is. We didn't know what it was going to be. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I appreciate it. And Commissioner Munoz, did you have a follow-up?
Actually, yeah, I just want to jump in on that
Yeah,
question real
absolutely.
quick.
Go for it.
Obviously, we can't see the land. I am taking everybody's word, your word, and for what we're looking at. And what I'm hearing is heavily forested. Would it be safe to say that the route that is chosen now, the route that you are proposing, is less likely to be developed because it does go through the middle of a forest?
No, I don't think a forest stops developers. It's, I think, topography. I think the Reno Code calls for maybe 15%. There's hillside ordinances, which reduces your ability to develop. So, on flat land, maybe you get a unit, on a hillside if it's between certain slopes. I mean, Nathan probably knows this off the top of his head, but between a certain range, you get reduction. And there's some areas you just can't build in. I know some of this area, he's put a conservation easement on and said he's not going to build in that area. And a lot of time that's a trade-off, right, to get greater density in another area. So this area where he's talking about, I don't think that we're planning on building there. Now, again, there's some, some of this stuff is more hearsay, I suppose, but the developer told me there's less trees going that route than our original route. So, and I don't.
Okay,
I don't,
we'll leave that
inventory.
as hearsay.
Yeah, well.
But so you did confirm that because of the topography, because of the location, the probability of developing that area is quite a bit less, in your opinion, than it would be in the originally proposed.
Again, that's what I was told by the developer, and it makes sense to me because that's the property that they said, hey, we'll give you an easement on it. So if it was, I don't think they're going to give us the most valuable. And like I said, it runs along the property line. So that makes sense to me also, right? That's going to have the least amount of impact.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Thank you. My next question is for staff.
Okay.
Thank you, Nathan. So I'm going back to something Commissioner Velto had pointed out earlier with respect to the findings. And just kind of for folks in the audience, one of the findings that you said you would struggle with was finding number 2, which is compliance with Title 18. Do I have that correct?
No. Finding number 2.
Or sorry, that's a general criteria. No, that's... Well, I guess we're talking about 2 different sets of findings. So I was assuming you were talking about the general approval criteria findings?
I was referencing conditional use permit.
Got you. Okay. And so that is the proposed land use and project design is compatible with surrounding development. So can you walk us through just one more time so I can get a better handle on it? What's your main concern with that? Is it just the fact that despite the fact that it's private land, it is still within the city of Reno's jurisdiction, so there are some relevant rules, maybe regulations that would apply there. You don't really have line of sight to the impact, so you're not really sure that it could be compatible with the surrounding development with the information that you have. Is that your concern?
That is a concern.
Is that your primary concern?
That is probably the primary concern. Again, let me get my bearings here. I think compatibility, as I referenced, was robustly evaluated with the EIS. This area was a particular area of focus. There was community input. I don't know this was some time ago, but there was significant public input on the proposed alignment and concern with visual impacts addressed in the EIS. With that alignment that was, adopted in the EIS in 2018. Final record of decision in 2019. NV Energy knew that alignment. They're not beholden to it. Again, this is up to the Planning Commission, but they made their negotiations in 2020. So they knew what the Forest Service alignment was. And staff's perspective is, while, it's certainly within this body's discretion to veer from that, we don't have the information to say what the impacts are.
Got it, understood. And then just kind of an unrelated question, but going back to kind of the concerns around fire, can you just maybe walk us through like at what level, at least with the city of Reno's like jurisdictional nexus, like what has been the feedback from the fire department on the perceived risks or maybe perceived benefits of how NV Energy has proposed to construct it? Like what actually is their view of the fire risk? Have they actually opined on it to this point? I assume they would have had some view
Yeah,
on it.
they reviewed the information. We met with the fire marshal and discussed, and, you know, really, it's a cost benefit, right? Are underground utility lines safer? Yes. I mean, there's no disputing that, but it's a cost benefit. It's a feasibility given the hillside terrain, particularly in the Verdi, Somerset area. I mean, there's numerous power lines there currently. It's the Somerset Fire Station with the brush truck. So no, they did not express concerns, didn't provide comments specific to undergrounding.
Thank you. That's all I have for now. Does anyone else on the commission have questions? Oh, sorry,
Mr.
Mike?
Chairman, if I can just kind of follow up on something that Nathan said. I think Nathan's been very clear that staff is comfortable with the current alignment, that we feel that's been vetted. With this deviation, I think, as Nathan says, staff has not had the chance to vet that alignment. We don't know what the impacts would be. For example, the number of trees that would be taken out, the view shed analysis, any habitat impacts, as Nathan mentioned, the poles would be higher. Not to say that potentially whether we would or would not support that, we don't have the facts to do the analysis, and perhaps maybe supplemental conditions could be added to that alignment, but we don't have that information to process.
Oh, that's helpful. So is it fair to say that due to complete information, the city's position is you're uncomfortable making a recommendation either way because you don't have the information. Therefore, when it comes to making a finding, you lack information, therefore the body lacks information, and that makes it difficult to arrive at a finding?
I'll let Mr. Gilbert address that.
I would concur with that.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your concurrence on that, and I will defer. Commissioner Rohrmeyer.
Yeah, going along those lines, is there a very clear, Mr. Sullivan, can you outline going forward what the permitting path would be with the federal agencies to analyze the zigzag? I mean, say you got approval today, say you had, and the condition 9 was not an issue. What is the permitting path to give some certainty to get this analyzed?
So in the conversations, Mark Sullivan, for the record, sorry, in the conversations that we've had, we have an environmental team that is communicated with. Marnie Steele is the name of the person that's running the project from the Forest Service. And Marnie's laid out a list of things, and actually I can pull it up and I can tell you exactly what, but the study is going to be, it's going to be an amendment to the FEIS, and it's going to list, it's going to go through that same process of all the same things that we did, that they did in the FEIS.
With that, is it the amendment that would fall within the 12-month time limitations?
I'm sorry?
Would the subsequent permitting fall under a 12-month time limit for analysis by the agency? Would in 1 year's time, the answers, so to speak, from permitting and analysis be available?
No, it'll be probably a couple of months.
Okay.
We would embark on that right away. And what we would propose is that we would start construction on the south side of the project so we can get this construction season in. And then we would be, when we built up to that point, if it wasn't completed yet, we would stop there. And then when it's completed, then we would move on through that area. Shocking, but my email's not working so great. Anyway, it would be all the same studies that were required.
Okay, I was just curious what the path to, is it, I know with the amendment, I mean,
Yeah,
then
we
there's a
would-
notification in the
We would,
record.
right, it would be the same process. There would be probably a 45-day comment process, I believe, through the Forest Service. It would be Nevada SHPO, Cal SHPO, all of the same groups that we went through for the original EIS. They would all be included in that and provide input, analysis of, biological, cultural resources that are out there, whatever those may be. And we're aware of the Weber Invasia. We don't believe there's any Weber Invasia in the area that we're going in there. And the cultural resource study was done on the site, was my understanding again from the property owner. But there was a site that was down south, closer to our 345 Alturas line, and that was already mitigated, which basically mitigation for a cultural site is they pull all those things out, they document that, they send it to the state gives it to the property owner. But it would be all the same process, is my understanding for the amendment.
Okay. And EIS being a disclosure document, not necessarily it's not like a CEQA equivalent substantive action. You disclose if there's an impact. It doesn't necessarily mean you would have to not proceed with the project, correct?
No. Yeah, usually, like I said before, they're going to give us mitigation measures. Either there's no impacts or we're not going to mitigate. It's either mitigate or avoid is typically what you find in an EIS, and that's what you'll find in this one. We're either mitigating things like when we're cutting trees down, because one of the things that they talk about is wildfire. We built it in the National Electric Safety Code. They have standards in place. They're constantly updating those standards. I know from the building department perspective, years ago, they had problems with people evacuating out of houses when they're on fire, so they lowered the window sills down. This is a requirement for a height on windows. So that's the same thing that happens with fire mitigation. We constantly are getting updated. We used to have a 20-foot setback from our power lines. Now there's a 25-foot setback. Actually, your guys' code in the EIS is going to be 21 feet, but through regional planning, they have setbacks that also, it's an additional 10 feet on each side. That's a government mandate, not ours. We don't need that extra safety because we already have it built in. So there's a lot of things like that that we're going to already do, but what we do is we're going to mitigate that stuff. Like they said, it's 3 to 1, on the habitat stuff. So it's actually, it seems like a bonus. You're going to take some out, but you're getting 3 times much. It's like happy hour.
I also had a question. Under the PCUN, are you able to go back to the Utilities Commission, and if there's an onerous condition put on you by local government in a CUP or an SUP process, are you not able to go back to the commission and have the commission review those?
Yeah, that's an NRS, and I believe what it says, though, is it's at 200 kV or above, and it's a 120 kV facility, so it's got to be a higher level. And usually I think that's correlated to higher cost. There's a certain number that would hit and that they would be interested in. But again, the undergrounding, I think Nathan brought up the undergrounding part. He actually, he called me on the undergrounding stuff too, of how it works. But they're the ones that decide who's going to pay for undergrounding if somebody chooses to underground. And I think the number currently, the last number I had is about 7 to 1. So if you have $1 million overhead cost, it's going to be a $7 million underground cost per mile.
And then, one thing I didn't hear a lot about, although it was mentioned that this is an issue of resiliency under NERC, could you tell us what the current conditions are in this area? I understand that this is going to give redundancy to West Reno. What are the current conditions, and can you tell me about the need for this?
Yeah, what it is the NERC requirement is that you have to, if 2 systems fail, that you have to have a way to back up those 2 systems so you don't have overload on the system, everything cascades and goes out. So the current conditions, when we did the study, I think, and I don't have the MVAs right off the top of my head, but they determined it was needed. It was like 74 MVAs, and maybe we had the ability to provide 85 or something like that. I mean, there's a narrow margin, and they're saying you guys need to fix this problem. And so there was a peak. We had a big growth time, and then it kind of slowed down a little bit. But we monitor that, and then we don't have a choice. We have to move forward with it. So the need, I don't think there's a question about the need. Again, that's a PUCN that forces us to, we put it in an integrated resource plan. We just submitted a brand new integrated resource plan, I believe, yesterday. So it talks about all the stuff that we're going to do. Those things are all available to the public also.
I think I'm good.
Any other questions from the commission?
Yeah, I have a quick question. It'll be for you, Mr. Sullivan. I'm going to go back and touch on the lines again that are running either to or from Truckee. If you look at those lines from overhead on the most recent Google Earth, there's a very significant road or scar or very visible look to where the power lines are. Are we to expect the exact same or something very similar? Because you've come and said several times that you're going to add vegetation, you're going to put back the roads the way they were, you're going to make sure the area looks like it does now. With you saying that and then looking at these power lines that have been in for years, very visible, plenty of time to have grown back over, but they're purposely kept clear. Is that the same thing that we should expect going over the top of Peavine?
Yeah, there's two different things, Mark Sullivan. There's two different things going on there. One of them is, and I don't know if that's an overhead line or an underground line. Underground lines, have different standards also. But the overhead lines, we clear the vegetation out of that right away to prevent fire. And so the setbacks are required. I mean, it's all laid out. There's standards that we're required to meet. And so that continues on. We'll clear vegetation out, and this is permanent vegetation we're talking about, and trees also. And then there's temporary. So like the roads, if we have to widen a road, the EIS is requiring us to put everything back that's not temporary. So the permanent construction, you'll see underneath the power line, we'll have a road that goes underneath, or at least we'll have access points that may be using various different roads to get there. A lot of them existing. That's what we try to do. But there'll be, typically we have a road underneath the access, but we can't have, we can't have a bunch of vegetation around our poles and those types of things, because that's how you get power poles. So they burn down.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Becerra?
Sure, just a question, maybe for Nathan and Mr. Sullivan, maybe at the same time. A lot of great discussion, a lot of great questions, a lot of unknowns. This is a project of regional significance, though, right? So I'm a little concerned that some of the unknowns are unknowns for being a project of regional significance. So I'm curious, would it benefit staff to be able to sit down, have the opportunity to sit down with the applicant, hash things out a little further, find alignment on some of these unknowns, and just in general, so if I asked you or the applicant, hey, how many trees are going to be knocked down with this new route? What's the impact on the wildlife and so forth, that we can get a very clear-cut answer? No pun intended, actually. So would y'all be amenable to something like that, having time to realign, sit down, and have the opportunity to bring something that's a bit more baked?
I think more robust analysis.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd be amenable to that.
Okay, and Mr. Sullivan and crew?
Yes, Mark Sullivan. We're happy. We're already going to go through that process. What we would ask you to do is just that change in the amendment, keep condition 9. Just change from Exhibit D, which shows this FEIS alignment, and change that to or as amended. So if we go back through the process with them, and there is some other alternative, whatever that alternative may be, then they're the ones that do the analysis. You guys look at the analysis. Nathan's not going to do analysis. He's going to look at the analysis that the Forest Service does. So he's not going to do tree counts. He's not going to do, any of that, looking at endangered species or wildlife or any of that other stuff. Is that right? Is that fair to say, Nathan? Yeah. So all this analysis is going to be done by the Forest Service. So if the Forest Service does it all and they agree to amend another route, whatever that may be, we would just like you guys to accept that. And then the city certainly will get that.
Oh, I appreciate that. I think the nuance here, though, is that while that might be the case, that's not before us today. And so
it is before you. That's the application that we submitted. That zigzag route is what we submitted.
I understand that. But the impact of the zigzag and the answers to the application is not before us. You yourself have been unable to answer very clear-cut questions, only referring to, well, it's posted, it's in the packet, and this is not.
What questions are you referring to?
Just line of questionings throughout. So all I'm asking is if you would be amenable to being able to continue perhaps this this matter before us this evening to be able to sit down and find alignment with our staff to then come before us through the process so we can actually have a more thorough conversation included with the general public.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be able to do that because of our schedule. And so if you guys vote it down, I mean, we have to go through the process. A PUCN forces us to go through the process. And so we would have to continue on this process until we get an ultimate denial, if that's what it's going to end up being, because we don't have the ability to just arbitrarily say, oh, we're going to give up now. And there's a lot of impacts based on schedule and construction and, you know, there's just a plethora of things, you know, ordering materials and having materials sit and, you know, there's a lot of impacts that, you know, I could probably talk a half an hour about that.
Sure.
So I don't have the ability to do that.
Okay.
I would ask that you would recognize that there's not going to be a difference between this route and the outcome in the FEIS and an amendment. They're going to tell you the same stuff. It's going to be avoid or treat. That's what you know is going to happen, right? We're going to avoid if there's some kind of feature out there that we have to avoid, or we're going to treat it if there's something out there. I mean, that's what you've got in the EIS now, and it's going to be the same. I've seen, well, you guys are planning commissioners. You've probably seen 20 of them. They say they all do the same thing, right? They address what the issues are, and that's what's going to come out of it. So I think that you could be secure in knowing that that's what's going to happen, that these things are going to be taken care of, just the same as if it was the original route. The way we're going to treat those things or avoid those things, that's going to happen on the other route also. Thanks.
Great, thank you.
Do you have any further questions from the commission, or should we move into discussion? I'm not seeing any additional questions, so we'll move into discussion. Would anyone like to start?
Okay, Commissioner Manis, I'll start. I'm going to ask the commissioners, if you haven't yet, to open up Google Earth and look at the lines coming down from Truckee down into Verdi.
Could we put that up on the big screen for everyone? Would that be okay?
So I'll continue while she puts that up on the overhead. The concerns that we heard over and over and over and over, if you go from Donner Ridge here and follow that line all the way down, the concerns that we're hearing from the public are, look what they're going to do to this beautiful area that everybody uses.
Can you point it out again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so this right here, Donner Ridge, and you can see the line that goes all the way up past Stampede, drops down, and then starts, which is just above the top of the ridge there. So, very real concerns. There is no ifs about it. If they do put the line through the forested area on the zigzag up there, it is absolutely going to take out the whole center of that. without question. There's nothing they can do. That was confirmed by Mr. Sullivan. They do have to have a certain clearing through there. It is going to take that area out, 100%. There's nothing they can do about it. Whatever the reasons may be, some of them from the people that own the properties now, there's obvious reasons why they don't want to go through the more developable land. I think that's pretty evident, and why they would try and send it through some area like this. Thank you. It's pretty hard for me to make the findings not knowing what really is going to be done there. We don't have, I mean, without, like I said, without being able to sit down and see it and walk through this area where it's going to be permanently modified, I don't feel there's any way that I can come to the conclusion of what the impacts are actually going to be. And that being confirmed by Nathan numerous times, we don't know what the impacts are going to be. So just for that reason, along with a few others, I just can't make the findings in this, and I will not be in support of it.
All right, Commissioner Rohrmeyer, I'll give
Please.
a counterpoint to this, respectfully, though I appreciate your points. So coming at this, you know, I just really feel strongly, and I'm no longer in an energy career, so I can feel comfortable saying these things. There's a federal process here that took almost 10 years, baseline studies, environmental impact statement, which is the most thorough analysis. 4 alternatives were considered. The applicant didn't pick the route. It was done through a multi-agency, multi-year process, costing, I'm sure, considerable amounts of money. And these are the tensions that we have to deal with. We need energy, we need reliability, we need infrastructure. And so I'm going to trust the federal process. I don't think local government at the end should stand in the way of these efforts. It's happened in Washoe County more than once, that these things are usurped at the very end, and it's kind of, there's no good path forward when they get to these challenges. So I'm going to support this on the premise that our federal agencies, the U.S. Forest Service here, namely as the lead agency, will be doing a thorough review. They might even require supplemental EIS, another EIS, depending on the level of impacts that they find. And the applicants, NV Energy in this case, they'll have to follow whatever the guidance of the feds are. But I don't think Reno should be standing in that path. So I will support the project, and I'm going to allow the zigzag. I would be supportive of removing condition 9.
Commissioner Velto?
I would be supporting the project with condition 9. I'm a little concerned about the change that's being made in hearing from staff that they have not been able to evaluate it. So I would be supporting it with the conditions and think I could make the findings under that scenario, but I'm very concerned about the change not having been evaluated by staff.
Commissioner Becerra, please.
Similar sentiments, a little blend between Commissioner Muniz, Rohrmeyer, Velto. I won't be able to support this project as presented, particularly taking the lead of staff and others and not being able to answer basic questions and the impact. I would suggest still, instead of a denial, to recommend the applicant to sit down with our staff and perhaps the community to try to align on a viable solution, and then bring it before us through the local process, and go from there. And in that way, if it does go through the appeal process one way or the other, our city council also has the relevant information through due process to make a more well-informed decision as well, one way or the other. So I won't be in support.
Thank you, Commissioner Becerra. My sentiments are similar to Commissioner Velto's. Having familiarity with the EIS process, I am comfortable saying that, I do trust the federal process. I understand that it's very thorough, but this isn't a federal jurisdiction matter. I mean, I think that was kind of thoroughly discussed this evening. I have concerns about being able to make finding number 2 under the conditional use permit. I share Nathan's concerns and also have a lack of comfortability with moving forward without having the facts. So I don't want to outright deny, but I can't get comfortable with the amendment as presented. So that is my sentiment on this. Any additional comments from the commission, or should I entertain a motion? Sure.
One additional comment. Let me rephrase my last statement. I can be in support of this with condition 9. So I cannot support a removal of condition 9 and adding the deviation. So I just want to make that clear.
Understood. Thank you. Commissioner Becerra?
Pretty much similar clarification as Commissioner Muniz. And again, if that's a deal breaker for the applicant, again, I would suggest going back and continuing this matter to find alignment with staff.
Any additional comments?
Just that I could also support the idea of continuing this to allow more discussions as an alternative. I don't necessarily know if that's
Agreed.
Okay. Is anyone interested in making a motion?
Did we get some clarification if people, if the city staff and applicant want a continuance?
We certainly can.
Mark Sullivan for the record. We're always going to take an approval over a denial. So if you guys leave condition 9 in and you approve the project with condition 9, we would certainly we accept that.
Does staff have a view that they would like to share?
Nathan Gilbert, I apologize. I didn't hear what Mr. Sullivan shared.
If I may, Chair? Yeah.
Sure.
Sure. Mr. Sullivan said he would rather take an approval than a denial, and he would be amenable to us saying move forward while keeping COA 9. But I think I'm still a little unclear there. Would staff only be comfortable with COA 9 as long as the original route was in place? Or
That is what condition of approval 9 says.
correct. So, Mr. Sullivan, are you aware of that? I thought that would be the case, Nathan.
Am I aware of what condition 9 says?
Well, I know you. Well, let's just.
I've been arguing with you all night about it. I'm pretty familiar with
No,
it.
so COA 9 is essentially saying y'all would stick with the
Original route, right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I understand that that's what it is.
Oh, okay. And you would be okay with that
Well,
this evening?
you know, I'm not the ultimate decision maker, but my job's to get approvals. So if I can get an approval from you, you know, I'll take it back to the team and say, hey, here's what they did with it. And we'll see what ends up happening. I mean, I appreciate it. You know, I know this is heart-wrenching. You know, these are the tough decisions, right? Where you're trying to balance what's right for the community and what's right for individuals. And I know how challenging your guys' job is. And so I appreciate you guys spending the time on it you did. And I certainly would appreciate an approval. Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Well, I can certainly support the original route if that's the motion that's being put forward. I suspect this will go to appeal, so I don't know who wants to make the motion. I wouldn't be making that motion because I still support the zigzag.
So I just want a clarifying question maybe for Nathan. Given this dance this evening,
Sure.
are y'all comfortable with an approval with the original COA 9
Yes,
and
that
so
was staff's
forth?
original
Just-
recommendation.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Approval with conditions listed in the staff report.
And the original route?
Correct.
Okay.
I have it up. I'm ready.
Commissioner Munoz, please.
Commissioner Mooney, in the case of LDC 23-00015 NV Energy Utility Corridor, based on compliance with applicable findings, I move to approve the conditional use permit subject to conditions listed by staff.
Do I have a second?
Commissioner Velto, second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Armstrong?
Yes?
Becerra?
Yes.
Munoz?
Yes.
Romeyer?
Yes.
Velto?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. And with respect to an appeal process.
Mr. Chair, I was going to say, if
Go
you could
ahead.
please read the appeal process.
Happy to. Any final action not including recommendations or failure to take action by the Planning Commission may be appealed to the Reno City Council by the applicant, the mayor, or a city council member, or any person who is aggrieved by the action or inaction. An appeal, together with fees, must be filed with the city clerk within 10 business days, starting on the day after written notice of the action is filed with the city clerk. Okay, we will now close item 5 and move to item 6, Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Liaison Report.
I believe Commissioner Becerra was there.
Yes, Rochambeau, Commissioner Rowe? No, standard meeting. We discussed a few items that came before us, but nothing out of the ordinary. But there'll be more to report at the next meeting, which may be at City of Sparks, considering that the Reno Rodeo is going to be taking over 9th Street.
Okay, thank you. We will close item 6 and move to item 7, staff announcements.
Just a few announcements this evening. First, I think we made the announcement at our last meeting, but just so everyone is aware, the July 3rd meeting will be canceled. We will not be having a meeting on July 3rd, which I think we did not have a quorum for that meeting with the holiday the next day. As far as council actions, the Santara Quilisi Fire Station Amendment that you approved recently, that item was continued at City Council with a date uncertain, so I'll keep you posted as that moves through the process. Next week, the Riverside Specific Plan District that you approved recently, that will be heard by council next Wednesday, along with the Valley View Planned Unit Development, which came before you about 7 months ago. They, at the request of council, made some changes, and they're going to bring those forward next week. And those are the only announcements I have today.
Thank you, Mike. We'll close item 7 and go to item 8, Commissioner's suggestions for future agenda items. Seeing none, we'll close item 8, move to item 9, public comment. This item is for either public comment on any action item or for any general public comment.
I did not receive any request to speak forms, no voicemails, and no correspondence received for this item.
Anyone in the chambers wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll close item 9 and move to item 10, adjournment.
So moved.
We are adjourned.